Harvey Kaye, welcome to the Nomiki Show. This is a special interview. We do these special interviews once a week. This is part of what you get when you're not just a patron, you get it early, right? If you join us at patreon.com/the Nomiki Show, Harvey Kaye is a patron. Even Harvey Kaye is a patron, and he watches our show live. You also get the audio form. You get special behind the scenes segments. You get my little voice memo thing that I'm going to be doing every week starting on Monday, talking about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what I'm thinking about in my off time. Very casual conversation. That's what you get as a patron. But you also get these interviews, and you get them before everybody else does, which is special, I'd say. All right, Harvey Kaye is professor of what? I don't even have your bio up here, and you're on all the time.
Justice Studies. Although I'm on the verge of Professor Emeritus of Democracy and Justice.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't. I don't make a big deal of it, but I retired in August because, as much as I like to talk to you and other hosts like this, I don't like the idea of teaching online. And by retiring, I could spend more of my time talking to people like you and others. So it's a formal thing, official thing, which I can't actually say I'm yet Professor Emeritus, even though they talk about it because it's not official.
Okay, so it's not official, but you are a professor-ish, emeritus-ish.
Yeah,
and you are,
that's from now on, that's what I am.
You are the author of Take Hold of Our History. You're the author of The Fight for Four Freedoms. You're the author of Thomas Paine. Just looking at your books on my wall.
I actually wrote Common Sense for Thomas Paine back in 1776.
You created Thomas Paine. You made him great again. All right, so I want to talk to you about a couple of things. First, I would love to get your hot take on. So the Biden campaign started to look a little bit promising, and I bit my tongue because I've felt like I've been through this before. But they were dealing with progressives in a better way than the Clinton campaign did in 2016, where they basically just told us to F off, and then punished us and said we didn't vote for them, even though they were calling me a Jill Stein supporter, even though I was literally a surrogate for them. So let's just take that. That's how they dealt with us. The Biden campaign is actually, I feel like the personality is very much what Jen O'Malley Dillon was, which is she was the chair of the Unity Reform Commission, and she is a consultant. She worked on the Obama campaign, and then now she was the campaign manager for Biden. She always was like, okay, I talk with you, but at the end of the day, she's on the side of capital, and it don't matter, right? That's kind of how the Unity Reform Commission ran. So it don't matter. Thanks for the promises. Thanks for the votes. Here we're just going to appoint DuPont people and Cedric Richmond, who's taken more oil and gas money than any lawmaker in the House.
Apparently, it's one of the most polluted congressional districts.
Yeah, one of the top polluted congressional districts, and he's in charge of climate policy appointments. So I'm really starting to wonder: is electoralism really our path? And please, because my entire identity, this is a personal question, Harvey, Professor Harvey Kaye, student of history, expert on FDR and crises and revolutions, studied Marxist. I'm literally ripping apart my desk right now. That's how stressed out I am. Am I just it's my entire identity. This is a personal question. I'm about to just go and find my favorite torch and torch it all. What do we do?
Look, there are those, obviously we're talking about people who argue for movement politics. And there are those who spend so much of their time talking electoral politics and government appointment questions, okay? And then there are other kinds of folks who come in with yet other arguments about this. But this is the key thing. There are no victories merely by way of movement politics. There are no victories. And let me explain to you what I mean. Getting laws enacted, we're not in a post-constitutional age, even if Donald Trump ignored it. So for example, if you want your movement to matter, you must eventually translate your aspirations into law. And I'm quoting now Bernie Sanders, Congress makes the laws, which by the way, is to go back to this whole question, should Bernie be in the cabinet or should he stay in the Senate? But we're not going to go there right now. But it's also the case that if you want to make electoral politics matter, you damn well better have a movement. Okay. So, and what I mean by that is, look, I think too many historians and movement activists and others do not understand how progressive FDR was when he ran for president in 1932, when he pushed his cabinet and his, what they call them, the writers of laws, the folks he brought into his circle, and the Democrats themselves. I don't think people quite grasp that he was ready to move far more than most people are willing to give him credit. Movement people, if you don't mind, people you've had on, have said basically, FDR would never have done this for labor or that for, well, that he wouldn't have, but they would never have enabled him to do that if he weren't the president. In other words, it's all well and good to have your heroes, okay, a movement politics, and Bernie is one of my heroes. But if Bernie's not president, we don't get the laws. So what I'm getting at is this: FDR invited Americans to push him. He wanted the push because he knew damn well he needed the push in order to basically turn to the likes of Congress, or for that matter, to the likes of Capitol, and say that we have to do this.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. So he had to.
People are just movement people who deny the imperative of electoral politics are as realistic as they seem, as determined as they seem. They're naive. They're naive. Those who just focus, like if you turn on CNN and you listen to David Axelrod and that crowd, you'd think that all that mattered was the mood on any given day of Barack Obama or Joe Biden. Well, that's a waste of time to watch. The fact is that you want to know, have you received signals from these people that they want you to push, they want you to act? And that's what FDR did over and over again. He signaled it, and it went into laws, it went into speeches. I mean, people should, I don't expect people to go back and read all these speeches, though I did a damn good book on FDR speeches, but I do think it's imperative for people to realize that you have to elect people who are not only going to pursue your agenda, but also those who are in positions that are supposedly above the partisanship, but are actually waiting to be pushed. Look, LBJ, Martin Luther King, the people in the streets down south did not create the Civil Rights Act, but LBJ and the UAW and FLCAO that lobbied for all of that were responding to what was going on in the street. And the fact is that LBJ himself told King at one point, you're going to have to stay in the streets for us to make this happen. You need elected and you need movement. It isn't a choice of, well, can we do one without the other? You have to have them both.
Essentially, the electeds, the president's Democrats who have made these big movements, they're acknowledging that they are afraid of Capitol, and that the only way for them to be able to challenge Capitol is for the public opinion to shift based on movement, or be so extraordinary that they have no choice but to say, what am I supposed to do right now? What am I supposed to do?
By the way, the third force that you really want, if history is an indicator, is you want Capitol to turn on your president. Make the president want you, embrace you. So for example, FDR sought in the first few years, he wanted to make everyone happy, you might say, okay? So he was empowering labor in the National Industrial Recovery Act, but he also was empowering capital. The problem was that he, for a variety of reasons, he alienated capital. They turned on him.
Right.
They did everything they could to take him down. And as labor and working people generally were pushing FDR to go further in the New Deal, he did so. So what I'm getting at is that, wouldn't it be great, this is going to sound utterly ridiculous, but if we could get Capitol to turn on Biden, what a wonderful day it might be.
I mean, look at the police unions. This is a perfect example, okay? I understand it. I mean, it's an extension of the capitalist state. I will use New York as an example because something happened a couple of days ago, which we're going to address on the show. The Police Benevolence Association in New York has historically given to both Democrats and Republicans. It has not been a solely Republican force. They endorsed Trump. The police unions are extremely powerful across the country in Democratic cities. If they weren't working with Democrats, then we'd have a lot of reforms in our cities, which are, as Republicans love to say, led by Democrats.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of days ago, the deputy leader of the state senate, who's my state senator, Mike Gianaris, he got a threatening tweet, literally threatening him from the official Police Benevolence Association Twitter page, saying he should look over his shoulder, and then talked about how, because the Democrats won a supermajority, it looks like, in the Senate in New York.
Right.
And so he's the leader of the political extension to run races. And they spent millions and millions of dollars doing so. Okay, like, what's wrong with that? But the PBA said, you should look over your shoulder. And I thought this was I texted my senator and I said, that's extraordinary, because very rarely does any Democrat have the courage to take on the police unions. And I think that is a moment that we have to really recognize that somebody in New York, a lawmaker, was willing to go head to head, and they came after him. And that, what you just said, these forces, capital forces, the police unions, turning on the folks that they've been funding for years.
Yeah. Yeah,
Is that an example? Am I right, or is this?
Well, that's shifted it a bit to. You've actually so shocked me with that incident that I'm actually shocked by the incident. Okay, because I'm still thinking back. I'm thinking back to the 70s when I was growing up in the New York. Well, I was in London part of the time and Louisiana part of the time.
We'll get to the biography portion later, Harvey.
I'm sorry. We won't have time today, I'm sure.
I don't think we will, yeah.
It's the case that I remember when it was the calls for police review boards, community police review, that kind of thing. And I could have sworn that we were solving the problem then of overactive police, the best way to put it in a friendly fashion. So basically, as this unfolded and we saw the kill, by the way, that was in the New York area. That's why I come back to New York, and it's amazing. And then also, it can't be more than, I'm getting older now, I'm much older, but how many years ago was it when in fact police unions were lining up alongside Democratic politicians in favor of gun control? Okay, which I admit,
it was just a few years ago.
With the idea of a more peaceful city, so on and so forth. Anyhow, all that. So that what we find now is, of course, if the deputy president, whatever you've just referred to,
deputy leader of the Senate,
deputy leader of the New York Police Benevolence Association.
Deputy leader of the state Senate was threatened by the PBA.
Right. Sorry, I just find that so outrageous. That's the kind of thing where in any decent society, the person would literally hand in their badge.
But that was the official union going after. That wasn't like what official badge?
It's not going to happen, but they're practically inviting the abolition, the end. Look, I don't support the idea of abolishing police unions.
That's it.
But it's like they're saying, just, come and get us, right?
That's literally it. I'm shocked that they're exercising so much. They're losing the court of public opinion. It's not like, he's moved more to the left, but Mike Gianaris, senator, has been in office for a long time. He ran the Democratic strategy. He is literally part of the strategy of the electing Democrats. He's like the institution. So the fact that they're doing that, I think signals something else. I'm very curious. There's I have a tweet, we could probably put it up, from a few years ago that somebody found when I was running for office in New York. And I tweeted something along the lines of, pretty soon, New York is going to be nothing but empty apartment buildings and police lining the streets. And here we are in COVID. Somebody found that tweet and posted and said, oh my God, Nostradamus. Because the two industries, and the reason why I mentioned that in 2018 was
where you're going. Go ahead.
Because the two industries that have completely controlled Democrats in New York, especially in the city, and made it so unbearable to live in, is real estate developers and the police. Right. And it is completely unaffordable. It's what I ran on. It's what they came after me in a very ruthless and disgusting way. because I was willing to shine a light on the developers who've literally bought off specific politicians. And I started naming names because I'm a reporter. I didn't know you don't do that when you run for office. Oops. But this is what happens, is they're beholden. And so we're seeing at the local level in New
So you are
York.
calling upon people to raise your rent and threaten you. Okay.
I was, yeah, they did raise my rent. No, but what I see locally in New York is not much different than what we're seeing in Congress. It's not much different than what we're seeing in the Biden, transition team. It just seems like they're so beholden to certain interests that I'm like, what do they have on you?
Yeah, look, I've been living in Wisconsin now for 42 years, but I'm intimately connected to New York all the time because of family, people such as yourself. And one of the things that strikes me, as limited contact as I've had personally with California, the people I know in California, everyone in the Midwest probably thinks New York and California who are progressives think that progressive strongholds. And I'm always constantly reminded by my friend, well, Joe Sandberg out in California, by you in New York, that we shouldn't fantasize that kind of thing, okay? I mean, if we could get rid of the Republicans in the state of Wisconsin who are running the legislature, then gee, maybe we become the progressive stronghold in the United States.
It's I think the question is it's not just a matter of a couple of special interests here and there. It's not just the oil lab. There are plenty of Democrats who don't take oil money. There are plenty of Democrats who don't take certain bad money. But there are not a lot of Democrats, even if they don't take the real estate money or the police money, they're not willing to take them on. And so I think this is a moment that calls for what you said, just to go full circle. It calls for more than the status quo. It calls for not just taking money, it calls for going to war with them, because it's just so, it is just so, I mean, in New York City, for instance, there are all these protests happening, and all these leaders who show up on the third day of the protest just in time to have, a photo shoot, and they'll do press conferences and they send out press releases. And, there's plenty of those folks that do that, especially if they're running for office or have higher ambitions. But had they called for defunding the police? I'd like to know, did they present a bill to defund the police? And we all know what defund the, I mean, it's called talking about moving.
I think I've told you before, I think I have a theory that the call to defund the police was actually concocted by somebody on the right. And I think that we should have, from the beginning, called for the demilitarization of the police, which, by the way, people who would otherwise not be so, be antagonized by that would readily understand it. Okay. I mean, for years, we've heard about the amount of military hardware that has been literally handed over to police departments. I mean, I've heard from people living in central Wisconsin, telling me the kinds of equipment that they've accumulated. So demilitarizing the police is clearly the way to go, because you will convince no one.
Sure, but aside from the actual like slogan, right? Aside from that, the policies, they're not doing it. Some of the people who are supported by some of the most progressive organizations in New York, whose membership believes in this. And I'm just like, if you can't do it in this moment, when are you going to do it? And that is my concern right now about what's happening. If you can't do it now, what is the point of all this?
I think that's a rhetorical question.
No, I'm Harvey.
No,
I need you to answer the question.
Yes.
Harvey,
yes. No. I didn't mean rhetorical.
Like, how do we get out of this?
I mean, you've given it, that's a yes. But I also think, I mean, why is it that the Democrats themselves, look, the Democrats blew the campaign. Biden won, the Democrats blew it.
Biden barely won. Let's just be very clear. 8 million more votes or not, the margins were so thin in states, he barely won. Yeah,
but he did reverse the three. Okay. I mean, I look, I mean, they decided they were going to go with the I am not Trump campaign. But that's not what I want to dwell on. What I want to dwell on is this: the lack of imagination on the part of the Democrats. So who do they send out? They send out a Republican Kasich. They send out Clyburn. I don't even remember the third person. They send out these people to literally lambaste the left.
Right.
Okay. Because what they're saying is,
Joe Manchin.
Look, Joe's smart. He didn't run with you as far as they're concerned, and he's not going to bring you in now. But the
Yeah.
point is, if Joe Biden had half the smarts that I hope he would be changing the language of demilitarize the police. Barack Obama would be saying those kinds of things.
Oh,
It
no,
shouldn't be
Barack
like-
Obama thinks the solution to all this is my brother's keeper.
Oh yeah, my brother's keeper, and maybe more education.
Through charter schools,
Yeah, right.
of course.
Yeah, of course.
Means tested, everything. Harvey,
Yeah.
I don't know why. I feel like today is the day, you know, it's interesting how this election cycle has gone, but I've noticed this tone from a lot of folks, just in general, like there's something about today. Like it just, they don't care. Like, it's not like we lost. Okay, it was depressing when we realized we lost this wave down ballot,
Yeah.
but this is morose now. I feel there's just I'm very concerned when there's no path to change. That's what concerns me. I don't see the path. So, parting words, 30 seconds. What's the path?
Look. Last week I was arguing that we needed to mobilize in support of the progressives in the House and the Senate, because they're the only ones who can at all get into the ear of Biden. I still believe that, but I also want to say I found a better language, and I tweeted it, and I've been talking to a lot of people about it. Even FDR needed to be pushed. But I want people to hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying he wouldn't have done things any otherwise. What I'm saying is we don't have an FDR incoming to the White House, which means we're going to have to find various ways to get access to pushing him. And I'll tell you what, since you only gave me 30 seconds, you and I will talk publicly again soon, and I'll tell you more.
Perfect, because I also want to know about your time living in Mexico. I'm just really curious.
Well, I mean, but that would bore other people.
No, wouldn't I think that? Oh, kidding me? People love biographical stuff. All right, Harvey Kaye, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to all you guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click that little bell button so you know when we go up. Oh yeah, it's down. It's not up. No, the bell's up.
Oh, it is?
The likes are down. The
Okay.
subscribe button's up.
Okay.
And join us on Patreon, patreon.com/The Nomiki Show. Be cool like Harvey Kaye. He is a patron. He helps fund the show, so we can put. It's actually pay to play. Like that's why he's on. I'm not gonna lie. So maybe if you get, sayonara.
Yeah, you bet.